Morning. I'm joined here, obviously, by Chief Fowler and Chief Callisto of Office of Public Safety at Syracuse University. Roger Springfield Cahack, date of birth March 30th, 1955, was arraigned this morning on 4 counts of unlawful surveillance in the second degree. Each of those are Class E felonies, punishable by up to 4 years in jail, and what that statute pertains to is the unlawful surveillance of people in places such as a shower room at the Carrier Dome. Mr. Springfield Cahack, commonly known to most of us in this community as Roger Springfield, a former sportscaster here. His title at Syracuse University was Director of Media Properties and Production. The law under which he has been indicted was put into effect on August the 11th, 2003. I want to go through the timeline of this case with you. On December the 6th, 2012, a SU Media Production staff member was examining some footage from the Syracuse University, University of Southern Florida football game. He noticed that the, quote, post-game locker room, close quote, portion of that tape seemed to be exceptionally long. When he reviewed it, he discovered clearly inappropriate material and brought it to the attention of his supervisors. On December the 8th, 2012, SU Public Safety notified the Syracuse Police Department and the District Attorney's Office, who responded to Manley Fieldhouse to review the videotape in question from the October 27th Syracuse University of Southern Florida game. That game was played in Tampa, Florida. On December the 11th, 2012, a search warrant was signed by the Honorable Stephen Doherty of the Syracuse City Court, a search warrant authorizing the search of the home of Roger Springfield Cahack, 109 Valerie Circle, Fayetteville, New York, as well as his office and the media room at Manley Fieldhouse. On December the 12th, that search warrant was executed at both locations, and Mr. Springfield was brought to CID. He was questioned, and he was later released. On December the 12th, Syracuse University suspended Roger Springfield, and on December the 13th, they fired him. On December the 14th, Mr. Springfield, accompanied by one of his attorneys, came to the district attorney's office in an effort to cooperate in identifying where some of these tapes, where some of these films could be found to assist the Syracuse detectives that were investigating the case. The case was presented to the grand jury last week. An indictment was reported out on January 10th, and Mr. Springfield was arraigned this morning in front of Judge Miller. As I said earlier, there were 4 counts of unlawful surveillance in the second degree. All of the incidents occurred in the indictment at the Carrier Dome, and all involved men's teams. Count 1 relates to the November the 10th, 2012 Louisville football game, Syracuse-Louisville football game, and that count alleges tape was made of several of the athletes as they exited the shower area. Count 2 pertains to a 2010 lacrosse game. 14 victims have been identified in that tape. Count 3 pertains to a 2010 lacrosse game. 11 victims have, a lacrosse soccer team, and 11 identified victims have been identified in that. Count 4 pertains to a 2012 soccer team filmed while they were showering. 11 identified victims and 6 victims as yet unidentified. My office has worked very closely with officials from Syracuse University as well as the Syracuse Police Department. We have identified, or attempting to identify, 108 victims of Mr. Springfield's alleged surveillance. 10 other videos have been found. Some of these videos are outside the statute of limitations or occurred when the statute was not in existence. 2 of the incidents, in addition to the one that I referred to from Tampa, occurred out of state, one in Massachusetts and one in Akron, Ohio. I have spoken to the district attorney in Tampa, to his chief assistant in Tampa, and we will be reaching out to the DAs in Massachusetts and Akron as well. There were a number of still images that were recovered as well. Detectives in the Syracuse Police Department, I'm sure the chief will comment in a second, that worked on the case included Sergeant Yvonne Jimenez, Detectives Raul Santana, Krista Joseph, Nancy Hawk, and Detective Rick Smith. They've done nothing short of an outstanding job in a very, very tedious process of going through the massive amount of video material and an effort to identify each and every victim. At this point, this investigation is continuing, but at this point, there is no evidence that Mr. Springfield disseminated these images for anyone's use other than his own. There is no evidence or any report or any allegation of any inappropriate sexual contact by Mr. Springfield with any of the athletes. The Syracuse Police Department, as I said, will continue to investigate this, continue to pour through this material. I remind you that the defendant is presumed innocent, he's pled not guilty, and he awaits trial. Now, turn it over to Chief Fowler.
Good morning. I just want to say that, yes, we are continuing the investigation, and this was an outstanding job by all of those involved, by members of the Syracuse University Department of Public Safety, by discovering what they had and bringing it to the attention of the Syracuse Police Department, the Syracuse Police Department detectives touching base with them, realizing what they had, and then we coordinated with the District Attorney's Office, and we all worked together to bring this case to the point that we are here today. And this is just a great example of how, when people do their jobs the way that they're supposed to do, this is how investigations has the potential to end. And we will continue to look at the remaining evidence, and we will continue to report back out to you guys our findings. And I just want to commend all of those involved.
And obviously, from the perspective of Syracuse University, the most important aspect of this is the students, the specific students, and we are reaching out directly to each of the students and offering the full range of services that are available through our Student Affairs Division to assist those students in any way that we can.
Any questions?
Bill, was this case where, are we talking about cameras that were hidden, or were they out in plain sight? Or
Mr. Springfield appears on a number of the tapes himself, and you can actually see him setting up the camera. And it appears from the evidence that SPD has uncovered that what he would do would place it in a position, obviously at waist level, and use a piece of tape to disguise what in most cameras is a little red light indicating that the camera is on and working. So naturally we considered all possibilities. Was this an accidental recording, so forth and so on, and we quickly discounted that possibility.
Fitz, what happens, what kind of charges would we be talking about? Would there be any federal, would there be state for any of the incidents to happen, like you mentioned, in Florida, Mass, Ohio?
Well, I don't want to speak for the U.S. Attorney, but some of the incidents occurred out of state. If they were able to prove that he crossed state lines with the purpose of committing such an act, that there's a potential federal violation right there. I'm sure I'll speak to him at some point in the future to determine, see if he's interested in that. My conversation with the DA in Florida, once she learned that it was film strictly of Syracuse University athletes, her attitude was pretty much, it sounds like it's your problem and you deal with it appropriately.
You said there were 108 athletes?
Yes.
So were they
yes.
spread out among different kinds of teams?
Yes, the soccer team, the lacrosse team, and the football team. We've had no evidence of any other men's team, including the basketball team, having been photographed.
And they didn't know they were being photographed?
Absolutely not. And we will continue in an effort to identify each and every one of them, to notify them of this. They have a right to know. They're the victims of this as much as anybody.
Fitz, they all took place in the home locker room. There's none of this relates to any of the visiting teams.
That's correct.
You said there was 14 total videos, 4 that fall within the statute and 10 that fall outside the statute of limitations?
I believe that's correct. Yeah. Yeah. Some of them out of state, some of them outside the statute of limitations.
And those are all the same still, football, lacrosse, and soccer?
Correct. No other teams, to my knowledge, have been taped other than the ones that I've mentioned here today.
We're all male athletes.
All male athletes, all at the Carrier Dome.
So how long has this been going on?
Well, we know it's been going on at least since 2010. Some of the images come from before 2010, and some come from way before that. But I don't know the earliest date. Do you know, Jeremy, the earliest date of any?
At this point, maybe 0203.
0203, which would be outside which would be not only beyond the statute of limitations, but it's before the statute itself was even in existence.
Is his cooperation continuing?
Sorry?
You said he had cooperated. Is that continuing?
Well, I mean, he's cooperated to an extent. I mean, obviously, he's pleading not guilty. He's going to fight these charges. So
Tony,
we like him to be very cooperative, but can't always get that.
Tony, can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
Whether there's been, after all the headlines we've seen in the past couple of years on this issue, whether there's been a change in the method of response when you hear a complaint along these lines, or how you handle it?
Sure. Well, certainly, as soon as it came to my attention, this particular case, and I was able to verify that my view was that there was a crime committed, I made a phone call immediately to Chief Fowler, and then that same day we began working immediately with his detectives in the district attorney's office, Jeremy Kelly, on reviewing this. And the change is that they're involving me quickly, so that if there's if the athletics or anyone has a particular concern, an issue that comes up, they're quickly contacting my office once they've determined that they might have a problem. We're analyzing it to determine whether it's a situation or not, and then we're moving forward immediately with contact with the police department and the DA's office. So the speed with which these things are done is pretty quickly.
This may follow up on what Bill said, and I don't care if it's either one of you chiefs or Bill takes this, but is there is pretty much everything been shared amongst the offices? I know there was some concern when we had a prior incident with an SU employee that there wasn't always a sharing. Are we all on the same page?
Yeah, we've been working. As the chief said, we've been working together on this.
This is an example of how things should go. Yes, as I said before, Tony contacted me. My detectives got involved right away when they pointed out to me what we had. I made the call to the district attorney's office myself. The district attorney's office got involved, and they all did an outstanding job.
The assumption is that he acted alone.
There's no evidence to indicate that anybody else has been involved in this, and again, reiterate that there's no evidence as of yet that he disseminated this material to anyone else.
You indicated that this came to light because someone noticed an unusually long tape of the incident in November. Where was that noticed, and what was he doing? What was he going to do with that? Was he
Tony might know better than I do. My understanding is that what they do is after any game they take it and they want to get like an outstanding tackle or a nice pass or something and make a highlight film. And he noticed that the part marked locker room, that's generally not going to appear on the 5 o'clock news. So he noticed that was, I think, 14 or 15 minutes long, and that seemed unusual, and he pretty quickly and pretty alertly realized that something inappropriate had happened and then let OPS know about it.
And in the past, what would have happened? Would it have been on that original tape and he was somehow getting it off and sending it to his personal computer? What was it that he did with it?
I don't know if we can answer that question at this point.
Bill, you've mentioned a couple times no dissemination, no allegations or any evidence of any sexual contact, but still taping somebody, especially in a locker room, without their consent. I mean, what kind of a violation of somebody's privacy are we talking about?
Well, it's a statute. It's put into a place to deal with something that when the penal law was originally drafted 200 years ago, and obviously nobody had anticipated. It'd be similar to, putting a camera in a changing room at Day Brothers. I mean, how'd you like to know that somebody had been watching you, over the years and so forth and so on? So this is in no stretch of the imagination a victimless crime. These 108 athletes, may just, want to take Roger Springfield in the locker room and beat the crap out of him, as opposed to, but this is a crime. This is the people of the state of New York against Roger Springfield Kayak, and it's definitely a victim crime.
Tony, can you say at all, without obviously revealing names or specifics, just kind of what the reaction is? I'm assuming the reaching out has been mostly from your end, kind of the students.
The Student Affairs Division is working directly with the students, and offering the services of the university to each of those students. So,
Or surprised, offended, shocked?
I really can't speak to that.
So could you explain? So they noticed that the post-game, the locker room section say was especially long. And did that employee then notice there was something inappropriate on that and contact you, or how did that, like, how did this actually kind of come to your attention?
Yeah, that's the person who noticed it was putting together clips for other games, and they noticed it was a large file. They noticed it was a very long file, and they looked at the whole thing and then began to notify their superiors, and ultimately, contact was made from the administration.
Is this someone that worked in Rogers' office at Manley Fieldhouse, or was this someone that worked at the Dome?
It was a person that worked in athletics.
So he was using university equipment, obviously, to do this. He wasn't playing it.
That's right.
Is there anything civil that any of these 108 people, any civil recourse or anything that
Sure.
they have? Or?
Sure. Okay, thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Chief.
While we have you here, can we just get your reaction to the action in Albany?
Okay.
Last night by the state senate and today by the assembly.
Okay. Does everybody want to wait? I'll just wait till all the. I haven't read the bill, and I'm looking forward to reading it. I've seen some news accounts of it. The only thing that initially concerns me is the limitation of a 7-shot clip. I think that if someone were to challenge that in court on Second Amendment grounds, my legal opinion is that they would be successful. A 10-shot clip is not so out of the ordinary and is not so limited to military or illegal use that it might not be supported by the Second Amendment. But I respect the governor's decision to do that, and I completely understand why he did it. I would have liked to have seen, which I understand is not in the statute, a provision that DAs throughout the state have been pushing for over a decade, which is a mandatory 5-year consecutive sentence on anyone who commits any type of crime using an illegal handgun. Obviously, if it's a narcotics transaction, the Assembly appears to be worried that we're going back to the Rockefeller drug laws, which is asinine. I think that if someone's involved in narcotics trafficking and is using a weapon, first of all, they're not eligible for any type of diversionary program. And in addition to the sentencing for the narcotics, they should be serving that 5-year maximum. That's the way you're gonna ultimately stop it. We can talk about mental health issues, large capacity magazines, assault weapons, but ultimately people that are so divorced from the norms of society that they resort to using illegal weapons, they just have to be separated from the rest of us for as long as we possibly can.
Were you surprised by the speed with which this bill moved through Albany?
Yes, it's not consistent with their past actions. I think two things were significant in that regard. One was certainly the slaughter in Newtown, Connecticut. I don't know how a sentient person who has control over public safety could sit back and say, geez, what are we going to do? That was terrible. Let's wait for the next one. And the second thing was the letter by Cy Vance, who's president of the State DAs Association, that was delivered to all the legislative leaders, and that was a bipartisan showing, 62 elected DAs, Republicans, Democrats, mostly Republicans, who came together to support a common sense package to reduce gun violence in New York, consistent with the Second Amendment.
And kind of reviewing where guns are sold, it occurred to me that at mall locations, let's say Sports Authority and Destiny,
right,
they sell guns. Do you think that is appropriate, that maybe in some instances, if it's a mall store where there's masses of people, it just seems kind of out of the
I'm not so much concerned about the location of guns. Obviously, I'm not going to criticize Dick's or Sports Authority or anybody else. Capitalism is great. They want to sell guns there. That's their right. Obviously, there'd be venues that would be completely inappropriate. What is really maddening and what is really inappropriate is that you can have a gun show and sell a gun to a lunatic without any government intervention or background check on that person. That should have been stopped long, long ago. You also got to ask some questions about how many guns is enough. Mrs. Lanza, who I'm sure the evidence will continue to come out as that case is developed, apparently was some type of survivalist and had this automatic weapon as well as 2 handguns, and quite clearly she did not appropriately care for those weapons. That's something that needs to be addressed. Should she have been allowed to keep those weapons with a obviously mentally ill son living in her residence? That's a difficult question. If the answer 6 months ago was no, Lanza might have taken something else to Sandy Hook and killed far, far less kids. I don't know. Those are tough questions, but I think they ought to be discussed in a rational, calm, and professional manner, and the ultimate goal being support for the Constitution of the United States and support for public safety.
What's the most important part of the legislation from your perspective?
There was one thing about increased punishment for trafficking and gun kingpins, but the most important thing that jumped out at me was this elimination of what I consider to be a massive loophole, that if you have an illegal weapon in your home or place of business, it's a misdemeanor. And these guys, they treat misdemeanors like, you and I treat dinner at McDonald's. It's no big deal. It's now a felony. I wish it was a C felony, but I'll take what I can get. It's an E felony, and I think that's a huge improvement. Thanks, folks.
Thanks.
Thank you. Yep. My pleasure. Nice to meet you.
We lost both cases about 5 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Is there a way to tell you after hours? No one wants to give up, so I gotta
Give me. Jim, let's just walk with me, and I'll give it to you for a second.
Alex. Thanks, Jim. Yep. I already told Steve. Thanks for helping. Oh, yeah. Hey, William. That's what happened.